Socrates on the call. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm a wee bit nervous, but I'll be okay. Just big deep breaths, calm down, be fine, be fine. I'm not going to say hello to everybody in the chat one by one like I would usually do, but I will just say hello to all of you. Thank you for tuning in. So we do have Socrates with us in the chat just now, but I'm also going to call him in a wee second. I just wanted to make sure that everything was working before I do that. Hi everyone. Okay, so I will kill the music for this because you want to hear Socrates and not hear all my amazing tunes. But let me just check that everything's working. So you're saying loud and clear. You're more nervous than me. Okay, well that's good. Then I can relax. If you're more nervous than me, I can chill out, right? Let me just see what's going on my screen. And I've already said that we're live. I might do that again later, but looks good for now. Okay, a few more minutes then. I told Socrates I wouldn't call him until bang on 8 o'clock MindArk time UTC, so we've got a couple of minutes just for me to relax, to be honest. We've got loads and loads of questions lined up. A lot of them is questions that I had prepared for an interview, but I had also put the questions out to the community and asked if there was anything particularly that people wanted to ask Socrates. So we'll get a bunch of questions from the community as well, which came from PCF, and these questions were not me who selected them. I had a look and see which ones were very similar to ones that I had already, but Socrates has picked a whole bunch of them from the community as well that he can answer, so that'll be really cool too. And I'm just gonna probably jump into an instance so there's at least something going on in the background. I'm actually just going to kill my music just now, if that's okay. Okay, I can hear myself think. I'll quickly jump into an instance just so we've got like something going on and you can still hear me okay even though music's off. Looks okay. Everything is gonna be fine. Maybe, possibly. Let me just check one last time. Just check I can kill my camera if need be. This button. Yeah, perfect. Okay, all is good, all is good. Let me jump in an instance and then we will give Socrates a call, I guess. For Socrates in the hot seat tonight. Let me grab some sweat. Just, you know, casually playing the game, And I know there's going to be loads of questions and things that pop up in the chat. I will try my best to keep an eye on the chat as well while I'm talking to Socrates. But if you've got like a kind of burning question that you really want to ask, we point towards the end where I'll say like, any of you guys want to ask anything, and if you do, please at that point, like just kind of let me know if I've missed something that you'd asked earlier on. But I can't see anything because I've got a fringe and it's right in front of my face. So I'm going to move it to one side so I can see. That's fair. Go do something, Bonnie. Perfect. I'll get a pet out. I'll get Artanis' sword out that nobody's allowed to buy because I'm skilling with it. Oh no, I don't really weapon cells, you know. Oh god, this is all going wrong straight away. Okay, so are we ready then? Is everybody ready? It's only me who's not. I'm going to turn down the sound on the game. I just really want you to be able to hear Socrates the best, essentially. Turn this down. Perfect. Where is Socrates' camera? Do you know, I didn't pin him on the coming on camera with me. Maybe one day we'll be able to manage that. Okay, so Socrates, I will just get him on the call just now and I'll bring up my questions. Fabulous. Okay. Okay, Socrates, can you hear me?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Let me just double check that. That was like everybody else can hear you too. Okay, so are we getting... Oh, thank you, Tysona. Are we getting Socrates loud and clear as well? Socrates, just say
Party hat.
a couple of words.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, Twitch chat.
Okay, it does look good. I'm sure they'll tell me if there's anything that doesn't work. So first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I appreciate that it's a Saturday night and you're probably not supposed to be working on a Saturday night, so I appreciate you're taking the time out to come and talk with us. I'm sure everybody else in the chat agrees. Certainly with all the stuff that's been on in the game recently, it's nice that we've got like, I don't know, a contact to talk to in the game. So you are very appreciated, so thank you for agreeing to this first of all. Are you okay
Welcome.
if I just jump straight in with the questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Thank you for the welcome.
Okay, so I would probably just think we should just start right at the beginning on kind of a wee bit more like about like essentially who are you. I think would be a good place to start. I know most people are aware of who you are and what you do within the game and that sort of thing, but I think it'd be good for us to kind of get an overview of that. So start with the basics for people who don't know you well. Who is Socrates? What led you to become the director of marketing at MindArk? And tell us a wee bit about your background, please.
Yeah. So, yes, my name is Socrates, as you know, also known as Joe. And yes, currently I'm the director of marketing at MindArk, and I've been in this position sort of officially since September of last year. Most of you will know me before this when I worked with Next Island. So I was first a community manager for Next Island, and then later sort of more in the background, doing kind of stuff that I more traditionally professionally did, which was data analytics and programming stuff. So yeah, I started working with Next Island in 2020, and that was the first time I was working for the platform generally. And yeah, that was the start of 2020, and then pretty much immediately from that, I started working as a community manager for Next Island, and I did that until the end of 2022, I believe. Then I was still working with the team, but doing stuff in the background. And then last year, I was working a bit more closely with MindArk more directly. So uh, sort of contracting, I guess you could say. And then sort of summer of last year, my predecessor in what is my current position left. And obviously that opened up an opportunity, and I threw my name in the hat, not really sure what would come of it, but obviously it's led here. And so yeah, I've been doing this. Still feel like I'm learning, getting used to things. It's a big change. It's a big jump from working with Next Island to doing this. But yeah, happy to be here. So it's been a 5-year journey, I guess you could say, with the
Oh well.
platform since 2020. I mean, I was very much aware of Entropia before that, and most of my previous jobs before that were in programming related things.
Okay.
But I've always been a keen gamer, keen MMO gamer. So yeah, I feel like it was natural that I ended up here. So yes.
I think one of the things that we're going to like touch on throughout the course of this conversation, but just when you kind of mentioned it there, is people I think still know you as a community manager, particularly when you're the community manager at Next Island. One of the comments that I saw the other day was that you seem to do everything. Do you feel a bit like that sometimes? Like you've got you know, your hand all over the place doing different wee things for the game, or are you trying very much to focus on your role as marketing director?
Um, yeah, difficult question. I mean, yes. I mean, the reality is that I'm doing lots of different stuff. Some of that is by choice, right? It's just something I want to do because it's fun. Other things are obviously more critical to my role. I mean, I think because I started off doing community management for Next Island, I from sort of day one, I was always kind of talking with players more directly in the Discord, in the Next Island forums at the time. So, I think it was it's natural that even now, my job description, my job role, requirements, whatever, none of that has anything to do with sort of directly talking to the community, kind of
Yeah.
like a community in the way that a community manager does, and
Yep.
certainly my predecessors didn't. But it kind of just seemed natural to having already established a good relationship with the players to kind of continue that. I mean, obviously, the reality is I don't have. Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Okay, just my Discord's gone black, so you'll just have to hope it still works. So yeah, so where was I? Yeah, so having been in the community already, it kind of just made sense that I continue talking to people and continuing those relationships and those discussions. But at the same time, with the role that I have now, I don't have as much time for that. And also, I think it's important that I set the right expectations,
Yep.
so I try and talk to people when I can. I try and reply to messages. I try and, I'm always reading stuff, I think is one of the things to always say, even if I'm not able to reply to stuff. I read most threads that aren't like trading threads on the forum.
Hmm.
I read a lot of the conversations that happen on Discord, so I'm kind of always keeping an eye on things. But yeah, just the reality of the job is I don't get to do the talking part directly as much anymore, and that's why it's very helpful to have people like Nanashana
Hmm.
in the role that he is after Morax left. So yeah,
Okay.
I
That,
forgot the question now.
no,
What
you're
was the
fine. You're
question?
fine. You just love us so much that you can't get enough, and you have to hang about with the community as well as do
Yeah.
all your
Oh,
hard
yeah,
work.
yeah. The question was, yeah, I was getting pulled in different directions. So yeah, yeah. And then the other thing is, I doing events and stuff in the game, and that is something that is again not really my thing per
Hmm.
se, on technicality. But I think we'll touch on this a bit more later as
Yeah.
to why I think it's really important to the goals of what I'm trying to do in my position. But at the end of the day, it is one of those things where it's, if anything, it's my time for fun, right?
Hmm.
I really enjoy doing those events, whether that's the dynamic events or the one we had the other day with the flight recorders and stuff. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's just fun. Yeah, it's not stuff. It's extra stuff that I do in my own time, but I genuinely enjoy running those. So it's that's my relaxing time.
That's what you do in your spare time.
Yeah, yeah.
So can you talk us through like a typical day in your role then? So when you're supposed to be, when you're doing your actual job and not the like 300 other jobs that you do in your spare time when you're helping all us out, what does the director of marketing actually do day to day at MindArk?
Tough question because I don't think I don't think there is such thing as a typical day.
Hmm.
But I mean, a lot of I mean, it depends on the day of the week, really. But a lot of my days is meetings, which is anyone who works any kind of corporate job will know
Yep.
that that's how that goes. Many of them are stuff that maybe doesn't directly involve me, but it's good for me to be aware of. So, when the teams are working on content that they're developing, I like to be there and be involved. So,
Hmm.
some of those meetings aren't, there's a lot of meetings I'm on, but maybe aren't sort of directly marketing related, but I try to kind of know what's going on. Some of it is obviously just internal stuff that I can't talk about, but I'm sure you can get the picture. I spend a lot of time on meetings every day,
Hmm.
most days. There's a lot of time spent answering messages, replying to people, just whether that's to do with the Creators Club stuff, people need something fixing. So I spend time, whether it's the bounties, giving stuff out. As people know, we have the sponsored giveaways
Hmm.
that we do. You'll see streamers, including Bonnie, having run these, and sometimes it's handing those out. Sometimes it's just doing boring administration stuff, like replying to emails and approving invoices and blah 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 blah. So there's a lot of just the boring stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it's prepping events. Um, yeah, I mean, so for example, when we run those dynamic events, it's, although when you're actually participating in it, it's like 1 or 2 hours. There's a lot of prep time that goes into that.
Hmm.
There's like usually like 3 hours, maybe plus of prep time beforehand.
Yeah.
So, it's going through selecting the area, writing the scripts which spawn the creatures where they need to be in the correct amounts. And I do some testing to see, okay, it seems like it's too much, or seems like that's too little, or maybe we need a mob here that's of this level and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then it's going through and looking at like what kind of items we want to drop during that kind of event, and then that's discussions with other people, and then obviously sorting it all out. So each one of those is a few hours of prep before as well. And then obviously there's the marketing side of stuff, which is planning stuff, working on projects, campaigns, and all that.
Hmm.
Most recently, the biggest kind of thing that I've been working on, I know we're gonna get to
You're
that
fine.
point,
You're
but
fine.
it kind of is covered by the day to day, right? So a
Hmm.
lot of my day to day recently has been designing the new starter packs, and that's something that was something I wanted to do, and I felt like I could try my hand at designing the stats for them.
Hmm.
So I spent a lot of time both in meetings and just sort of internal discussions with my own brain about, because it's a big thing to change, and there's definitely a pressure to try and get it as right as possible.
Hmm.
So that was a lot of like making, designing all of the items, all the stats, and then looking at it, play testing it and then going, nope, that's shit, and then back to square one. So even if it seems like a relatively simple thing to implement, the amount of sort of going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. So
Yeah,
that's been
it's
something I've been doing recently. But yeah, there is no day that's the same. But it's a lot of boring stuff, a lot of fun stuff.
it
But
seems
it's just always stuff going on.
quite a lot of hands-on stuff that you have to do, like physically being in the game or the test servers and testing these things before you're implementing them. And you,
Mm,
it, one of the things that like one of the next questions that kind of like ties on like with the thing that you were saying about the events is like a lot of the players were saying that you're engaging in the forums and events and you're doing all these things all at once, and it's people can often like mistake you for the community manager because you're like doing all that part. um
mhm.
do you feel, or can you explain to like everyone here essentially like how these roles are different and how your presence in the community contributes to the work that you do as a marketing director? So for example, just when you're talking about those starter packs there, that
Mm, mm.
being able to market those starter packs to people who are potentially have now just downloaded the game, because you know that that's going to be something that's going to be of benefit to keep them in the game because you've designed that starter pack essentially from a marketing purpose type of thing. But how does that, like, how do you detangle that from all the other stuff that you do, that this is marketing and all this other stuff could be essentially community manager stuff as well?
Yeah, I mean it's that. Yeah, that's a difficult question, right? Because I think a traditional view of what someone who is in a marketing position does versus what I do and what I believe the modern role of someone in marketing,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the gaming industry,
Mm-hmm.
is two very different things. So, a traditional um, view of what my position is like, okay, you run marketing campaigns, you design advertising, it's that stuff that you'll kind of traditionally think of when you think of it.
Yep.
But the reality is that in my to achieve the goals, right, of bringing in new players and also retaining those players and also retaining like retaining long-term players, retaining your existing community is, for me, it's marketing is 50% bringing people
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like getting them to download the game, getting them past the start room, that sort of first few hours. In my own terms, I say the first 50 hours,
Right.
which that's really the mark of like if a player can make it past the first 50 hours, it's like, okay, that's like you've got them. Obviously, people drop off after that point. Still, people will drop off after 5 years, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
but I kind of draw the line at around like 50 hours. That's when I'm like, yeah, that's a success. Um, so for me, marketing is like that 50% bringing them in, and then it's 50% retention.
Mm-hmm.
And the retention part is the hardest part because one, I mean, there's several factors that make it kind of difficult from just an objective standpoint. We are a niche game.
Mm-hmm.
As much as many of us here and myself really love the real cash economy aspect and find that really interesting, the reality is that your average casual gamer who, I don't know, plays Pokemon or plays Minecraft is maybe tends not to also be interested in real cash economy games, because that does tend to be a deal breaker for many people.
Yeah.
And then also you have to factor in that MMOs are not as popular as they used to be, and they're certainly not the main genre of games. So
Mm-hmm.
retention is the point, and so a lot of retention is outside of my control. So it's down to what the content teams develop. It's to do with game balance. I mean, it's a lot of things. We could talk for hours on
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the components of what makes retention, right? But the point is, there's a lot of that isn't within my control, but
Mm-hmm.
still affects the outcomes of the work that I do. So taking that into account, the reason why I tend to be at least where I can find time to try and be a bit more active in the community, and why I started running these dynamic events, and also there'll be at the moment those dynamic events have mostly been very small scale, right? But I'm planning to do some kind of longer lasting ones and sort of more grand ones.
Oh yeah, can
Um,
you give us any info?
no info yet. I'm still still planning, still working it out. But doing something that we haven't done before. and also trying to do something that's accessible to new players, especially.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I do these things, back to the point, is that as much as I can't have a majority impact on retention, there are things that I can do within my power to try and make that a little bit better. And for me, it's a simple like question. It's like if I land in a new game, a new MMO that I'm playing, and I see things happening around me. I see these events popping up, and
Mm-hmm.
there's all these things going on. Like that's more encouraging to keep playing than not seeing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the reason why I do more, even though I'm not a community manager and I do the community stuff, is that it's yes, it's hard to find time to really do it properly or whatever. It's not my job to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so intertwined with the goals of what I'm trying to do, and that's retain new players and retain existing players.
That actually really ties well into, we've actually kind of like covered the next two questions, but I can add on to one of the things I really wanted to know about when you were talking about the retention of the older players and even like the newer players coming in and seeing like one of the big events that you're running. You'd said that like these events can take like several hours beforehand to like get them set up and things. I was more curious, like personally, um, the way that you seem to organise like quite distinctive hands-on events, like you blend the in-game lore, it could be the PvP event challenges that you've done, the discovery, like the finding of the what was it called, the black boxes or flight recorders,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
finding them, and even things that kind of take part of like within the economy, so you're dropping like different things within the loot. Like, where does all that come from? Like, walk us through like how your process works in your mind of like how you get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just spontaneous thought. It's just how I work. The flight recorders one, I really like that. I thought that was, I know that's like a humble brag, but like when I'd finished, I don't know if it was, I finished work for the day because it was on a weekend, right? It was on a
Hmm.
Saturday, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. So in that case, it wasn't a work day, but I do remember I was going for a walk just around the woods that are nearby here, and I just thought like, because I was thinking of something else that's a little bit different than just the kind of hunting stuff that I was doing, and I just thought like, because I we had dropped like items around Camp Icarus and done that kind of supply ship event. So it's
Hmm.
like a supply ship has crashed. It's littered these uh new player items, and I remember that when we did that, put out all these and hid these new player items, and then suddenly uh like I don't remember how many people it was, but it was like within seconds there was like like 50 players like coming through the Camp Icarus teleport.
Yep.
That's good. But yeah, with the flight recorders one, it was like I wanted to do some kind of treasure hunt thing that was maybe a bit longer and that the reward was a bit more unique
Hmm.
and more interesting. And earlier that day, I was looking through some old items that, like, just trawling through like old vehicles, seeing the names that were coming up, and then I saw one. I was like, Pitbull Trailblazer. It's like I haven't seen that before, and then I figured it was handed out. I think there's like three before we did this event. There were like three of them in the game,
Hmm.
but like from long, long, long ago. And I thought, well, that's a cool kind of vehicle. It looks really, really cool. It's very unique looking for a Pitbull, in terms of its design.
Yep.
And I thought, yeah, that could be a fun item. So I was literally just out on a walk, and by the time I got back to the house, I'd kind of worked out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, and then I wrote up the PCF post, and bang, there you go. So a lot of them are just kind of I just come up with something. When it comes to what items to drop, I mean, some of that is a lot of that's kind of discussions that we've had internally. So I've said, hey, we've discussed these events that I'm running and stuff, and basically we come to like an agreement that I think it's fun to bring back old stuff. I think
Hmm.
is one thing. So people will notice that there's stuff in there. I mean, most of the loot that's in those dynamic events, you're not going to. It's not possible to get them elsewhere. They're old items that were taken out the loot a long time ago. And in
Hmm.
certain circumstances, some of those items are stuff that like we had made to be released as part of some content and then kind of just never made it in. Or one example is with the field regeneration chips, for example. I think we've historically released up to the third level one, and
Hmm.
then we took them out of loot some years ago because of a bug with AOE healing, and then it kind of just they just disappeared off the face of the game for the most part. So this was just an opportunity to be like, hey, we can bring these back, and actually we made like levels 4 till 9, so let's put them in the loot. And it's all limited stuff as well, so it's pretty what we consider to be low risk stuff.
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
relatively low TT, limited stuff. They're not game changing items. A field chip, a limited field chip, it's cool. It has a function. It will sell for markup, but it's not
It,
shattering the balance of the game. It's what we
yeah.
consider low risk. So with those events, it's just a lot of searching and looking for old items. A lot of the time, it's just old items that no longer drop.
Hmm.
That did, as I say. So yeah.
That kind of was one of the next things I wanted to talk to you about was the fact that you're talking about how what you're dropping is not affecting the economy and how essentially everything that you're doing, there must always have to be this consideration in the background of how will this affect the MMO, like the real cash economy side of things.
Mm.
Um, with the marketing part of that, you'd mentioned earlier about like for people who are playing Minecraft or so, like they're not going to be interested in A, an MMO, or B, something that's RCE. So you're having to find it like a different way of marketing it. So do you feel like marketing a real cash economy is a unique challenge, and then how do you like tailor your strategies with that sort of marketing, bearing in mind that the RCE side of it essentially?
Yeah, I think it's I do think it's a really unique challenge, and I think it's because the type of person that you are hoping to attract is someone who's like, oh, how do I phrase this? It's like, they're going to be more scrutinizing, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
It's like if you're playing a real cash economy game, I'm slightly going off on a tangent, which I tend to do, but you have Entropia players are not all the same, and I know that sounds like a really obvious statement to make, but I think many players forget it.
Hmm.
I think most of the forward kind of loud discussions that you see within the community and it's like perfectly understandable. It's not, I'm not like debating why or anything like that, but most of the conversation is dominated around, the numbers, the returns, the like buying and selling stuff, like economy, very sort of in that, and it's mostly hunters, right? It's mostly that kind of cohort.
Hmm.
But as a percentage of like the whole game, it's like people who are like playing on that sort of high level, whether it's like grinding for like end game items or the rest of it, like by numbers, by pure sort of head count, they are definitely a minority. Um, and this is the case in most games that you have a silent majority,
Hmm.
because the majority of players who play the game don't engage on the forums, they don't engage on Discord.
Hmm.
Because if you look at PCF, it's like, I don't, if you exclude like trading threads, if you look at just like people who are in the discussion, I don't know, but if I had to guess, it's maybe what, like 50 avatars who are like talking on PCF in kind of discussions, like a pool of like 50 maybe.
Hmm.
But that as a percentage of the player base, I'm not giving numbers. I can't share that.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that as a percentage of the total population is like minute. It's absolutely minute. So the amount of people who are sort of regularly in discussions on the forum or in Discord is a very 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 tiny portion of the player base.
Hmm.
So that my point is there are many different types of people who play Entropia, and a lot of people just they log on, they find if they can make a bit of profit, great. Some of them maybe set up a shop, maybe some of them care more about, there's many players that we have who, for them, it's a social thing. It's the fact that they have friends that they've played this game with for many, many years. And, they'll go out and do their hunting for a few hours, but, they've also got an estate with things they've collected over the years, and,
Hmm.
they like their clothing stuff. I mean, you're a great example of some of this stuff, right? Because, you love your clothes and your customizations, and there are so many different subsets of Entropia players, and what we think the Entropia player is maybe not so accurate. But all of those people, because your game is fundamentally underpinned by everything having a real value,
Hmm.
is there going to be people who scrutinize things, right? Scrutinize if something's not working correctly, it matters 10 times more, right, than in another MMO. And
Yeah.
so when you're advertising to people who where your your target audience is going to be very scrutinizing, it takes a lot more to convince someone who's very scrutinizing to play a game than someone who is not by default scrutinizing. This
Mhm.
is a really weird way of explaining it.
I understand what you're saying,
But
but
yeah.
if there's money involved, people are always much more. I mean, these are people's real money is involved, and people have
Mm.
value or perceived value tied up in things that anything you do or change would, yeah, they are going to scrutinize it way more than if you're, if it's Minecraft and it's like whatever, we'll fix it on the next patch. No one actually lost a lot of money on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I think another thing as well is talking about how what strategies work and what don't. I mean, Entropia has a really interesting history of how it's advertised its game, and um, in terms of direct. I mean, this is a debate I'll have a lot of the time. I don't think there's many different ways of advertising, and in this scenario, I'm just talking about direct advertising,
Mm-hmm.
so sort of like traditional advert. But in that respect, Entropia's had phases, I would put it, of how they market the game, and for a long time it was play this money, play this game and make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was like it was selling this thing of like, hey, if you play this, you'll make money. And I'm maybe I don't know if this is controversial, but I'm very much not behind that
Okay.
because I think a lot of that advertising, I mean, specifically about the language that's used, it's where it's like, hey, play this and you'll get rich, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's more about the specifics of language. Is that I think the legacy of that advertising has created an impression that Entropia is a scam,
Mm-hmm.
or is somehow, because when you think about it from someone who's coming in with the only thing they know about this game is I'm being told to walk in and make money,
Yep.
and then they don't make money like the second that they walk through the door, then you've set that expectation up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to not just have a very, very, very low retention rate, but you're also going to create people who then actively hate the game later on. So that's one way that Entropia used. This was a long, long time ago. I don't know when exactly, way before my time, but
Mm-hmm.
that was one way that the game was advertised that I understand why it was done. It gets clicks,
I was
but it
going to say,
doesn't
do,
get
do you feel like that was
users.
a low
Yeah,
bar to set? Like, if you say that,
I think
it's
it's cheap.
clickbait. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it gets clicks, people interact with it, but it it doesn't work. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work long term. That doesn't actually convert into proper players who understand the game and get in for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other sort of main phase of advertising I saw for Entropia was, and some of this is still good to have to some degree, but there was a lot of advertising that said nothing about the fact it was a real cash economy, and that's sort of the other end of the spectrum where it's like, well, hang on, why are you not mentioning like the most fundamental and unique and interesting aspect of this game? It's
Yep.
like, what, you've swung from one to the other, and I do think it's still important to have advertising that also includes and focuses on things more about the world and the gameplay. But uh, the point is you have to sell the game on what it is,
Mm-hmm.
on what it's good at, what makes it unique. But you also don't want to set yourself up for failure by saying, yeah, come play this and you'll make $1 million. So my approach to it is selling opportunity and selling the uh, I say it's like the virtual economic sandbox. It's like we're selling the platform, we're
Mm-hmm.
selling the what it is, the economy, the system. It's like we're not making promises here that you come into this game and make money, but we're saying, hey, look at this really unique economic system that you can come and interact with, and you can come and interact with it in any way that you. Do you want to go and open a shop somewhere and start your own? I don't know. One example is of a player who does this is Dracul, right? Because he has his. I'm name dropping a player, so I hope they're watching. I think it's Dracul, who has armor shops
Mm-hmm.
on every planet. Wherever you go, you know that like he has an armor shop there, and like he's made his thing, right? And then you have people who come in and they want to be the most skilled avatar or the best PvP person. You have other people who like collecting stuff or just want to have their house and stuff like that. So it's selling the system without making promises that become expectations that will ultimately kind of turn sour. So one strategy that I found worked, that I literally tried very recently, is typically in advertising you think, okay, you want something where there's not a dump of information, something like short, flashy, oh, bright colors and wow sounds, typical sort of stuff, which is
Yeah.
not bad, don't get me wrong, but it's the standard. But we semi recently, when I joined, started advertising on Reddit.
Hmm.
That was one of the first things that I did, because it's really good. You can target specific communities, and Reddit is huge for games and crypto as well. Which, even though we aren't a crypto game, we are. There's a mentality that's
Yeah,
shared.
like an
So
overlap.
it's a mentality that where there is a crossover in the kind of person who might be interested or involved in crypto, and an overlap with might be interested.
Hmm.
But anyway, what I tried was, actually just creating a post. No images, no video. It was just an info dump on. I don't know if everyone has seen it, but posted metrics of Entropy Universe in a press release, and it's a bunch of stats about the game.
Hmm. I've not
And
seen
I
it. It'd
I
actually be
put that.
quite interesting to get the link to that, and we'll have a nosy.
Yeah, it's out there. If you type in metrics of the metaverse Entropia, it will
Okay,
come up.
fab.
But it's a whole dump of stats. We posted it ages ago. It's like 3 months ago or something.
And we missed it. That's
Um,
great.
yeah, I know it got shared on PCF, so I know at least some people have seen it,
Okay,
right?
okay.
Um, but yeah, so I did that as an advertisement on Reddit. I've just been like, hey, this is our platform. This is the numbers. This is the system that we have.
Hmm.
And really just no flashy, no colors, no bright lights. And the click-through rate on that was like significantly times higher than any of the sort of standard typical advert. Here's a nice pretty picture and here's some like engaging text. So I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating, to use an English phrase, which is, I think it is definitely better to not treat your audience like they're idiots,
Hmm.
and also not to set expectations too high, not make promises you can't deliver, but sell them on the thing that makes the game unique, and that is this system that we're all playing within, this economic system that is truly unique. So, yeah, that's
That's
again, I've forgotten what the question
no,
was,
you're
but I
fine.
think that answers it.
That was really, really interesting. We will get that link and we'll get it posted. I'll stick it in the Big EU Discord. If somebody PMs it to me in game, I can stick it here. Ackers I don't have. Oh, there's somebody's cat's on already. Perfect, thank you, cat. Oh no, that's PR wise. That's not right. Anyway, we'll figure it out. We'll get the link.
Cat has got the right one,
Oh, that's the right
I
one.
think.
Okay,
Yeah.
fab.
That's not the Reddit post, but that's the data, the
Oh, okay,
stats that we
even better.
posted
So
a month
we get
ago.
the data without going to Reddit. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, so I'll just kind of totally switch direction then because I feel like you really covered all the bases on that. So thank you for that. One of the kind of the things that I noticed clearly from being a streamer and a bunch of people in this chat as well are obviously either streamers or engaged in the streaming world, so they'll know about this. Is the content creators club that you launched? Was it nearly a year ago or so that you launched that? Um,
No, I think wasn't it September last year?
God,
Oh, I guess that is almost a year.
almost a year.
Yes, my bad.
Could you tell us like how that came about and what your role and what you see the role of the content creators and play? Sorry, I'll try that again. What you see the role of us content creators playing in the future of Entropy Universe? So like essentially, why did you make it and what do you want from us? Type of thing.
That sounds like I'm kidnapping you. Um, what's the ransom? Yeah. No, so yeah, the Creators Club was something. It was literally when I got the job, it was one of the first things that I kind of thought, of like, hey, we need to do this. So that came about. I mean, to me, it's obvious, but I think this kind of lends itself back to when I was a bit earlier when I was talking about how is the traditional perception of what marketing is versus what I believe marketing to be today, especially in the gaming space. And to me, it's that most people discover games through content.
Hmm.
Um, it's 20 years ago, maybe most, or like 25 years ago, whatever. The way that most people would find out about games is through like banner ads on some, like, this is back when social media wasn't such a big thing, and so you had like forums that were like community specific or like other kind of sites, and you'd see banner ads. So you're like, oh, but the thing is like that's no longer how people find games. And I'd pose the question to most, or like the thought to most people here, which is that when you go on a random website on the internet, which let's face it is fairly rare these days that you even go somewhere that isn't like a bigger platform, right? So
Mm-hmm.
on the off chance you go to some random website, when you see advertisements like down the sides of these websites and like popping up in front of you, well, 9 times out of 10, if it pops up in front of you, you get rid of
Yep.
it. And for anything else you see, it's usually like, oh, that's probably a scam.
Yeah.
Click it.
Yep.
Because the internet's very different today than it was 20 years ago. 25 years ago, if you saw an advert for something, I mean, obviously there was a lot of scam stuff and all the rest of it, but there were also so many more legitimate stuff
Mm-hmm.
going through there. So most people don't really tend to interact with traditional website banner advertising. Um, Kind of the digital direct advertising that people still interact with is like uh, YouTube advertisement, right? So, like pre-rolls, like in search advertisement, so stuff that comes up in your Google search,
Yep.
and other stuff like in social media. So Reddit, the prime example, you're scrolling through Reddit and you see something on there. Um, so that's what remains. But by far, what is still growing is content space. And I know that most of the games that I have found over the years that I enjoy playing, I found because something popped up on my homepage, about random, and I was like, oh, I don't know what this is. I'll click on it. But
Mm-hmm.
YouTube recommended it to me, and then I've discovered a game. So really, the idea behind the Creators Club was at least starting to lay the foundation for kind of, I mean, it's two things. It's one, it's just supporting content creators for the game because, you know, more content about the game is more opportunities for people to organically discover the game.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. That's just how the equation works. The more
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's out there, the better quality it is, the more likely that you're going to catch people. And actually, it's the main way that people find games today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's good to support our content creators because it helps the game and they make good stuff. So it's just a pleasure to be able to do stuff where we can support them. It's
Yep.
stuff like the giveaways that we fund for the streamers. Again, it's like, is it like the most necessary thing in the world? No, but it's part of that
Yeah. And we
creating something fun and interactable and supporting and helping streamers grow their stream.
and we love giving away MindArk money, so it's great.
Yeah, I mean, so do I, to be honest, through the events and through the Creators Club. But yeah, I mean, and also it's, I know for a fact through some of the creators that are involved in this who have come and sort of sent me messages. I'm not going to name names, but I know that some people have messaged me and been like, I'm really grateful to be part of this. Um, and I've actually continued streaming or making videos for the game back. They might have
Yeah.
for a long time and stopped making content, and they've come back because of this program, right? So it's not just supporting existing streamers, but it's actually helping them grow their channels. It's
Yep.
helping them stay committed to producing content, and as I say, it's simple equation: the more content that's out there, the better
Yeah.
our visibility is as a game.
There's a couple of questions that are kind of popping in the chat. It's actually one that just came into my mind when you were talking about like the various channels, like people obviously looking, like finding games through YouTube and stuff. When you were talking of other advertising platforms, I know myself, I'm an absolute sucker for when there's adverts on Facebook or Instagram, for example, for a new dress or whatever it is, and I'm like, yes, like I'm having that. One thing with Entropia, and sorry, this is like straight from the side park, this one, that I've noticed the social media presence is actually completely lacking or gone. Is that
Mhm.
within your remit? Is that something that we might see in the future? They're talking in the chat about TikTok and these sorts of things. Could we see not just the creators creating things for these channels, but will MindArk? I know you've got your YouTube channel. Do you have any plans to branch out into TikTok or do more with the social media presence that you have? Just from the point of view of being an online company in the first place, like you would think that
Mm.
these would be places that you would really tap into, and that the algorithms on Facebook are so when it's shown people who are into game and then they would get your adverts popping up. Is it something that you are considering or?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, we do advertise on YouTube. In terms of stuff you won't see on our channel, like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not organic, but we have paid advertising that goes through YouTube, in the same way that when you watch YouTube videos, it's it's that standard kind of ad. So we do advertise through YouTube and stuff. But in terms of our media and YouTube, I mean, the short answer as to why it's under YouTube today is, um, we are unsurprised. People don't realize how small of a company we are
Hmm.
when you take out the people who are doing non-game stuff. So, like, people who work accounts, or people who work for HR, or people who do IT, technical, like hardware IT, and you start like filtering those like out.
Hmm.
When you actually get down to people who work on the game, it's a very small company for the size of the game that it is.
Hmm.
So obviously there's like a resource thing, and we've had Morax left, obviously, earlier this year. So that area has been lacking. I've got no issues with saying that.
Yeah.
So yes, I would like to continue to post stuff on YouTube and also on social media to kind of boost that.
Hmm.
It all comes down to a time and resource thing, but
Yeah.
yes, is the short answer is yes. There should be more stuff on there, and I would like there to be more stuff on there. But I also think that in terms of like, I mean, I think for the existing community, it would be good to have more stuff on our YouTube channel, right? For like, uh, talking developer stuff, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But if we're talking specifically for marketing towards new players, it's less important than, say, the Content Creators Club, because if you're a prospective or potential player, it's what I call it is, like the voice of authority. So if we as a company say to a prospective player, hey, you should definitely play our game, we're not biased. Um, a prospective player is going to be a lot more, what's the word, scrutinizing, or whatever, because it's like, I'm being marketed by a company, and I know that they're trying to pull me in.
Hmm.
But when it's content creators making content about the game, and they're sort of individual person, and they're not, they are not the company, their voice of authority has so much more impact than anything that we can put out as a company.
Hmm.
So a lot of the focus of why we've built up the foundations of the content creator platform, and also stuff that we will be doing soon in the future, a lot of that is about sort of, because that's more effective, purely, on marketing terms, not talking about existing community stuff, but on marketing terms, yeah, it has more impact.
Hmm. And there's been a couple of questions that's asked regarding like streamers, for example, at the kind of the start of this stream. And I think people do ask it in general. I know some of the content around it when saying like, will you do more kind of outreach strategies towards more influential YouTubers? Let's just say someone who has, huge followings, cross platform sort of things. Um, do you feel like there's a purpose to reach out to these sorts of people, or is it the case of quite often they're not playing the game for long enough to really get a good understanding and to explain it well compared to the other streamers, or do you think there's a balance to be had somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's a yes and no. I think so. For the last few months, I think, again, it's time and resource, right? But the focus for me over the last few months has been kind of building up a foundation.
Hmm.
So that was things like, yeah, building a foundation to kind of jump from a leap board, if you like. So it was founding the Creators Club, getting that up and running, getting that to a stable, good point where the concept is working.
Hmm.
The same was the case with our sort of direct digital advertising, so through Reddit, Google, YouTube, blah 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 blah. Getting that to a strong foundation as well, and it's like now where we are now versus when I started, we've halved the cost of acquisition. So for the same budget, we're able to bring in, as twice the number of players. So
Oh wow.
getting that foundation of something that works,
Yep.
has been my priority. So that was something. Now the focus is, okay, how do we help to improve the retention?
Hmm.
Because again, it's that 50-50 thing. It's like, right, okay, we know we've proven that we can bring in players, but you still have that huge drop off, that huge like
Hmm.
issue with retention. And again, the key is like, how do we get them to stay for that first 50 hours? Get them past the start room, get them through the tutorial, and get them to sort of play and continue on. So that's being addressed. I feel like this is going to be a question that's coming up separately, so maybe I should go into detail. But yeah, we have a number of things. New starter packs is one of them. Worked on with that issue. I can talk more on that maybe with a later question.
No,
And then
absolutely.
we also have a new changes to the onboarding experience, the player experience. I can talk about that more a little bit later. And then we also have a few new features coming to the game, which will attention. I can talk about that a bit later in the conversation. Yeah, so back to influencers. So as to why hasn't that happened kind of yet? Well, we've been building up that foundation in a lot of areas. There's been a lot of groundwork we have to do first, because it's like, okay, if you do a partnership expecting bring in a lot of players from it, the conditions have to be right to make the most of that opportunity. So I want the new starter packs to be in there. I want an improved onboarding experience to be in there, and some of these later to be there before we spend the money, because like influencer partnerships like on channels that are sort of 500,000 plus is really expensive. It's a lot more expensive than I think it is.
Yeah.
There's a reason why these YouTubers have very fancy cars and big houses. There's a lot of money, and it's also something that's very hit and miss. You can have like a sponsorship or a partnership or whatever that's really, really successful, and there's other times where you can. So it's a mixed bag, but we do intend to do it. I think there has to be a very rigorous selection process
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
find someone who has the right kind of audience for us, and it's also at the right price point. But we do intend to do it for a marketing campaign coming this summer, which I'll talk more about later.
That all sounds amazing. There's a few questions that they're asking so much, because you must have mentioned about 4 times during that one answer. The starter packs. Everyone's like, starter packs, starter packs. Do you know when they're coming out? Do we have a rough timeline of when we can expect to see them for everybody?
Yes, I mean, so they were supposed to come out this month originally, but what happened was in, and then there were a couple of issues with some of the stats, like one's got a texture issue or whatever, and we've had to patch with the launch of Aris coming out. That kind of took the priority for like patches and fixes and stuff. And actually, then I realized that it was actually better to give the community some time to digest the new starter packs coming, and also the stats. So one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've had so far in the last sort of few weeks or whatever is people have been saying, "Hey, can you switch the knife that's included in the new starter pack from being a normal sort of old style knife to using universal ammo?" Because people pointed out, which is a very valid point, and I'm kicking myself because I didn't think about it, that most of the new player missions reward universal ammo.
Yep.
And that is typically what you get. So, and also because of shrapnel conversion rate, that's a really great piece of feedback. And so, actually, even though initially it wasn't intended, it's been really good that we've had a bit of extra get feedback from players before we analyze the parameters. So, with all of that, I'm hoping to get them out next month. We have all of the web shop stuff kind of ready to switch over. We just need to update the item parameters and then test it, and then you should be able to get hold of them. But I will. There will be a proper announcement as soon as it's live, so it's not going to sneak up on anyone.
Sorry, that was a complete side question. Just everyone was asking, so I thought we shall ask.
Yeah, that's fine.
When you were talking about the different channels in which you're advertising Entropia, has there been anything that's been a real like surprise to you that's worked really well, like a success, or anything you can share from your recent campaigns? I know you mentioned the Reddit thing was quite a surprise. Is there other things like that you didn't think that would have been so good and it was?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think if something that comes to mind is the Reddit thing, right? That like just advertising in a what most traditional advertisers would consider to be a way in which not attention grabbing, it's not like good enough to get people's attention, but
Yep.
actually performed significantly better than other things. So that was a big surprise. I don't know there's been any big surprises to me. I think the surprises will be yet to come. We'll be doing a lot of uh, new stuff in the next few months. So trying to break into new markets.
Ooh.
I'll divulge more on that later. But um, yeah, so it is. I think there's going to be a lot of surprises and learning to come.
Hmm.
But I also think as well that the impact Content Creator Club has uh, been more than I thought it would, but also just content creation in general. So one example that I saw, this happened in the last few weeks. I don't know if there's anyone in yourself who's noticed suddenly a lot more Thai players knocking around in Camp Icarus and certainly new player areas, but there's been a
What?
sudden like surge of Thai players. And we were sat in our meetings at MindArk and someone was going, does anyone notice that there's a lot more Thai players suddenly? And I was like, yeah, because I quite often will hang around in Camp Icarus, but
Yep.
invisible. And I was like, yeah, I've seen quite a few of them. And we couldn't, and so we went to see if it had come from any kind of like particular campaign we'd run or anything like that. No, had it come through an affiliate link? No, it was, and we couldn't figure it out for the life of us. And then I was just at home browsing YouTube, and a recommended live channel came, and it was this Thai streamer. And obviously, like traditionally, I wouldn't, because I don't speak Thai,
Hmm.
and this was all in Thai. So I had no idea what it said, but it did pop up on my homepage, and it's a channel that has like 33,000 subscribers. It's all in Thai, no English.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's where it had come from, and it was
Oh
just
well.
this one guy on his channel who started streaming the game, and yeah, a bunch of his followers had joined, and so I mean, I wouldn't say it surprises that much. I know the impact that influencers, and streamers, and whatnot have,
Hmm.
but it was a surprise from the fact that we just saw all these players coming in from a very specific place, and
Yeah.
kind of scratching our heads, being like, "Well, we didn't do this."
That's quite
So
funny.
that was quite fun.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I have reached out to that streamer. I have sadly not had a reply. I
Did
don't
you
know if
reach
it's
out in
because his
Thai
English is
though?
not good, but yeah, maybe I should do that. But yeah, but that was fun. That was a surprise. It's nice to see that stuff.
That's amazing. You said earlier with the starter packs that you got some really good feedback on the knife should be using universal ammo. Um, that kind of touched on one of the questions that I was going to ask you, which kind of encompasses the whole thing from your transition through from being a community manager to what you're doing just now and managing so many different parts of the community, even though you're in marketing clearly. Um, your presence, your forum presence, and your presence in Discord and whatnot is really well known. But how do you personally approach communicating with the players when there's like criticism or really heated feedback? Which, like you said earlier, there can be a lot of scrutiny within the game because it's an RCE. So, personally, how do you deal with criticism and people being a bit nasty? I suppose.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's very varied. I think a lot of the times it's, I know that it's not targeted at me as an individual. It's targeted at the game as an entity, decisions. And fortunately, the position that I am in is, I'm not the balancing manager, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take the flack for those things. So I know for the most part, generally not targeted at me.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be a lot, and it's hard to deal with. I think for the way that I communicate, I think it's important. I try to be as transparent as possible. I think it's people understand. Anyone who's worked um, for any kind of company in any kind of public facing role will understand that there is stuff that I cannot talk about. It doesn't matter whether I want to um, talk about it, or even if I think that people should know about it. As an employee, as a professional, it's my job to adhere to certain things. So
Mm-hmm.
there are times where I can't say what I maybe want to say or people would like to hear.
They're
But
talking a wee bit. Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt you. They're talking a wee bit. Your voice is clipping ever so slightly. I think it's your voice activation. I don't know if your mic could be a wee bit closer. You might not clip a wee bit at the end.
See, hang on. Should be able to fix this. Test. Is it a little bit better now, guys?
That sounds weird to me as well.
Sounds better.
Yeah, you're not clapping now. Perfect. It was
Okay.
just we just would lose like the last half of a word, so we could still
Okay,
understand
that's
you.
fine.
It's fine.
What was I saying? Yeah, so in terms of my approach to communicating, I always try to be as open as I can be. I always try and be as upfront as I can be, and just honest about things
Yeah.
within the limitations that I have in terms of what I can say. And I think people who are on Discord will know that like I these days I tend to be a little bit more in the background. But like every now and then I'll come and dump a wall of text. I'm quite famous for doing this. So someone will say something on a particular issue, or there's like a discussion going on, and I'm sat there sort of going like, it would be a lot easier if I just didn't enter this conversation. But then it's that thing of like, well, it would be better. I have information that I can give. I have the time at this moment, so then I just dump a big sort of explanation. But I also think the other aspect of it, which I is that I also part of me trying to communicate as openly as I can is also kind of not um, part of that dialogue is also that it has to be a dialogue which is based on facts and not people's conspiracies
Yeah.
or beliefs or if someone's being kind of blinded by emotion. So at the same time, it's like if you're there are times where I'll not call people out, that's kind of sounds aggressive, but it's like very clearly state what the situation is, how it is, what the facts of the situation are, because I can have a conversation with people very openly about issues when it's a very civil discussion and we're kind of talking about issues, but when it starts to be like just throwing insults and stuff, it's like I'm not going to engage with that. And so long as my experience is when I think people know when they talk to me what my expectation is, and if people come to me and they talk in the discussions that I have in the main EU Discord, right? It's that when people are we've had many tough conversations in that Discord.
Yeah.
There's been many times where it's me being like, yeah, that sucks, and this should be better than it is, and it's not the way that I want it to be. But I'm only able to have those conversations when it's civil, and I think people know that if they're respectful to me, I will be respectful to them, and I will try my best to answer them. And so I think I've just tried to be very clear about, because again, I'm not a community manager,
Yeah.
so this is a lot of stuff that's just in my own time. So if you want my time, I will try my best to give it to you. But as long as we understand the rules of engagement, so to speak, and then we can have a conversation.
I do think, even personally perspective, but from what I've understood in my years with the player base, is they do really appreciate like openness, honesty, and being direct. There's nothing worse than all the smoke and mirrors, or not replying, or all the what's it they call it, like the business speech around stuff. But I
Mm.
think what the players quite like is when you just tell them straight, like we didn't want it to be like that either, like, but it's fine because we're going to do X, Y, Z to fix it. So I think that is like a really integral part of the communication. It does seem to be something that you get across, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think you have to be careful because the you do have like I always have to try and be as careful, and that there have been times where I've said things where I'm like, oh, that's going to come back to bite me, and it is, and it's not. Sometimes it is the case where things are said in what I consider to be a very clearly ambiguous way, or whatever, and then 6 months pass from that initial conversation, and then it's taken to be like this was a absolute promise, and it's like that wasn't what the conversation was at the time. And the best example of this, and again, this isn't to blame, I'm not blaming people for you know feeling this way about this specific issue, but like the best example is and I know people are gonna can ask more questions about Unreal Engine 5, and I'm gonna say right now I cannot tell you. I'm not permitted to, and it's also because we're a public company and it's something considered to be market sensitive. I literally cannot,
Yep.
even if you paid me a lot of money, I wouldn't tell you. So I'm prefacing my next comment with that, but
Yep.
The one of the dates that's kind of knocked around is like Q2 2025. And if you look at where the origin for where that came from, as an example of this phenomenon, is that it was an interview, I believe in 2020, with Henrik, the ex-CEO, where he said, I think it's like, we estimate around like Q2 2025. And that sole comment, that one offhand estimation comment, has been the basis. And like the defense to that is always, well, you haven't given us any more, and that is true. So I'm
Hmm.
not knocking it as a reaction. And yeah, it's right. Well, we have nothing else to go on. But I think it's also important to understand that I think a lot of the times when MindArk feels kind of scared, and I'm not, like, as you know, I'm very kind of open with players and will talk very freely, but MindArk as an entity
Hmm.
is more worried about saying things and tends to be a bit more reserved in their communication, is
Yeah.
because they know that there is a historical precedent of when they say something, it's taken as like as absolute law, and it's picked apart, and all the rest of it. And so there's that fear that anything they say, someone's going to find one word, one line, and hang on to it for the next 10 years. So I
Anything.
think it's kind of a chicken and egg situation where it's like, what comes first? MindArk, there's definitely what I think, in order for it to be better going forward, I think there has to be some kind of rules of engagement where the player, in order for us to have a more open and kind of transparent dialogue, there also has to be that other side of it um, where players understand that it's part of a conversation where things can change,
Yep.
rather than as like a prescribed law. And I think that's the reason why uh, I've had like quite a good relationship with players, talking in Discord and talking in other places, is because I think when people know that when I talk about things in the Discord, it's in the spirit of a conversation. They know that I don't talk on behalf of every function in MindArk. I'm not the CEO. I'm not
Hmm.
the head of content. I talk within the context of what I know,
Yep.
and with the knowledge that things can change. So I've always had that kind of good engagement with players, and
Hmm.
because I think there's that understanding on both sides. So yeah.
I think it does come down to that old thing of everything you do say can and will be used against you in Entropia. But in the same regard, there's, because it's an RCE, because people's real money's involved in it, when there is things that are said and people, look forward to this thing being happening, or they'll even invest a certain way thinking that thing's going to happen, then there's obviously the understanding if it doesn't happen, people kind of kick off, which is what you said earlier
Mm.
about the scrutiny side of things. So on the one hand, players want more information and they want communication, but if the things don't come to fruition, then there's a lot of frustration as well that's happening from what I've seen with it as well. And that must be quite a tricky thing to balance, like wanting to communicate, wanting to talk to the players, give them as much information as possible, but not let them down, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, it's a tricky balance, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not, I'm not the one who decides that,
Yeah.
as a sole person, right? So there
Yeah.
are many people who are part of that conversation to decide
Hmm.
things, and some of that is even at a level, way beyond us, which is like sort of not legal, but kind of up there.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, anyone who's worked in kind of companies, especially bigger companies, will understand that. I mean, I wish it wasn't. I wish it could be different. It's
Yeah.
maybe not the best way to be, but there are both valid. There are valid reasons for why that is. There are historical reasons for why that is. Does it mean that things shouldn't and can't change? No. Like, I think we should be better than we are. I think we should move to somewhere where we fit. We're able to be more transparent about about a number of things. But at the end of the day, even if we sort of, let's say, get to that hypothetical point, there are still, and I think most people sensible will know this, there are still obviously going to be things even at that point that can't be discussed. We can't have a discussion about like internal, like, non-disclosure agreement stuff on the internal workings of MindArk. It's like that's not going to happen, or like how our back end servers work. From a technical standpoint, it's like, there is still always going to be some reasonable limit. So yeah, Yes, but it should be better than it is. We'd like to get to that point. I think it requires both the community cooperating with us in kind of giving us that space to say stuff and being like, hey, this is going on, and like have it be more of a just we're sharing work that's going on and knowing that it can change and
Hmm.
priorities can shift within the company. And if we're able to get to that point, then I think MindArk as an entity, not me personally, but MindArk as an entity will feel more comfortable with just sharing stuff that we're working on, stuff we're doing, because
Yep.
it's not going to be like, hey, that thing you were working on that we saw like a glimpse of like 2 years ago, where is it? You promised it to us. So
Yeah.
that there has to be a balance between the two, and
Hmm.
MindArk needs to be brave. I think is probably the term to
Yeah.
use. MindArk needs to be brave. But my personal request is also that the players understand that in order for us to get to that point, we have to allow some or have that understanding that stuff changes, and it's
Yeah. There has to be a bit of
a
come and
two-way
go with
street.
it. Yeah. No,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Okay, if you're okay to move on to the next question, has there, you mentioned earlier about kind of like how the players influence a lot of like what's happening within like decisions that are getting made in the game. From the marketing side of things, how does the community influence your messages or promotional ideas? Has there been moments, for example, where a player has suggested something and it's directly shaped some of your decisions or campaigns for marketing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I read stuff every day, like on PCF and in the forums, and I think, I mean, there's such a huge volume of ideas that I get for many things. I don't think I could ever attribute like a change or a certain thing to a specific player, because
Yes.
like every time someone says something, someone else has said it at some point before, right? But there are many times where I read something, I think, oh, that's a really good idea, and uh, when as soon as like placing items came back into the game, one of the first things that some people are saying is like, "Oh, MindDoc should do, like a treasure hunt event." And I was like,
Yep.
"Yeah, that's a really good idea." There are also times I know from like calls I've been on with like content teams and stuff, oh, someone said about doing this and blah 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 on the forum, and or like, have you thought about this? And like that regularly comes up. So yeah, I'd say it's a regular occurrence that
Oh wow.
someone has said something somewhere, and so whether that's like in a support case or to us, and obviously the ratio of spoken ideas to ideas that come to fruition, it's like obviously like there's way more said than ends
Yeah.
up actually being implemented, but
Yeah.
there is still a number that happen, yeah, for sure.
That's good to know that what we're saying, like on the forums or like anywhere in game or so, is being listened to, and that even if we're not aware of it, that it's all getting fed back and the conversation's being had. If that makes sense, it's nice to know.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like a specific example off the top of my head, because it happens all the time. I know there's been like, especially with Aris recently, I know that there were people who had said certain things, and then I looked at the patch notes when they had come out, and I was like, oh, I'm sure I remember someone saying something about that. So that's maybe one kind of recent collection of examples.
Yep.
So
No,
yeah.
that's really great. Okay, so with such a passionate player base, and they're talking just now about the Unreal 5, and obviously you said that you can't mention that, but how do you manage the challenge of like building the excitement for the upcoming features, but while staying realistic to the timelines? Where you said that you couldn't, like you don't want to make promises that are not fulfilled, but you still want to really have that conversation with everyone, and then dealing with that like across all the departments that you said you have to, have meetings. You have meetings every day with all the different departments. So um, do you ever have any like nail biting moments where it's like stop press, like something's not going ahead? Like for example with Aris, how did you know when was the time to start advertising that, to manage the challenge of like building that excitement while still getting the thing in place at the right time, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean the running joke, which is always that we don't post patch notes until the game goes live, and there's a good reason for that. Um, so yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean, really, it's a little bit of a difficult question for me to answer, because I'm not the one who decides, obviously, like when something is ready. That's the content team, the
Hmm.
head of content or whatever will be the one who kind of says, okay, this is in the right state. But I know that there's been a number of times where there's something we've been working on and we've said no. It's it needs more time. I think the most recent example of that was the Space and Howling Mine update.
Okay.
You know, that was, I believe, supposed to go live at the end of December or somewhere around there, and then it got pushed back to what was it, January? And that's just one of those things where it's like it's a really tough decision to make. But you know, you have to, yeah, it has to be a decision that's made. I'm so glad it's not my decision. But yeah, it's just one of those things. It happens. That's the nature of it.
Yep.
And sometimes it gets pushed back. But you know, I think with the space mining update, I mean, had it have been released earlier, it would have been disastrous. I mean, even when we went live, there were still a number of things, because at some point you have to be like, okay, like, you know, we can't infinitely drag this out.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would say was good with that particular update, and yes, there are still, well, one of the biggest, struggles that we had with that update was space essentially hadn't been touched since it was released, right? So it's like,
You don't need to tell me.
there's so many, yeah, right. So there's a legacy of bugs, and I think, again, I take this as secondhand information from me, because I obviously wasn't, I'm not a developer in that sense, so I wasn't part of that. But I know from stuff that I heard from coworkers that like it was that thing of old stuff coming back up, and then, you know, the guy who wrote the code for that particular system or thing is like, you know, they left the company, you know, 10 years ago. So it's there was a lot of that. So I think the team did really well, and I understand why they delayed it, because so much of that stuff came up.
Yeah.
Is it perfect? Are there many more bugs to fix? Yes, absolutely. But that's an example of one of those things where, yeah, it's like, okay, we have already advertised this, we have already kind of like given out the information, but at the end of the day, we just have to delay, and we did.
Okay.
And it's the same with like starter packs. I mean, one of the ways of doing things is to kind of soft launch stuff. So with the starter packs, what I did is kind of, I've been telling people very openly, like, yeah, there's new starter packs coming. Yep, there's new, you know, they're going to come. I've already shared links to the items, and as I said before, that was a good way for me to get feedback
Yeah.
from players, to be like, hey, you know, this is really, really cool, but, you know, have you thought about changing this stat to this stat, you know, because I think that would be better for new players or whatever. So my tactic quite often is to soft launch stuff, where it's like you give people a chance to kind of comment on stuff, and it's what we did with Mayhem, which is, again, it's not my, I don't take my pure word in this, because I'm not, you know, I'm not the people who decide what happens with Mayhem. I'm the marketing guy, but, you know, obviously I'm aware of everything that happened there, and that was one of those, I think, cases where you know, I think it's still, it will still adapt as we go, and it will still make some ground. But that's where, you know, a situation reached a kind of boiling point, and we looked at a lot of the feedback that had come in, and yeah, made hard decisions to kind of change it to based on that feedback. And you know, I'm sure it will change some more as well. I don't think, you know, I think the mentality has shifted, where it's like, okay, it's no longer this like, you know, MindArk, you know, ignore the feedback. MindArk says this is how it is, and it will forever be like this. It's like, okay, well, this is a dialogue now, and it's like we want to make a Mayhem that works for as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So that it's rewarding, but so that people can participate, so that it, you know, there's active gameplay. But then, you know, I know that recently a lot of people have said, hey, but I really enjoyed chilling out and shooting in Annihilation. You know, I wasn't, you know, they weren't botting or whatever, but they're like, hey, I like to have Netflix on the side and whatever. So it's like taking in all this feedback and continuing to shape how we go forward. So I don't think, with everything that's happened with Mayhem the last few months, which I think is, in my opinion, steps in the right direction. I don't think that journey is over yet. I think there's going to be more tweaks and changes and stuff to really make sure that we keep listening, and to also just make those changes. So that's slightly tangential, but I feel like it's the same kind of thing.
And it is,
falls under that.
It is one of the conversations that the players are all having at the moment. And to me, it felt like something had to be done, and almost like a, you know, a short, sharp shock. It changed, and now going forward, you can evolve from that point, if that makes sense. But it's good to know that the company itself has taken those decisions from the players, like from the feedback that they had got, that this wasn't working anymore, and like, so they had to make the decision to do something about it. So I think it's good to know that we're being listened to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I also think, one of the things to remember as well is that no, because we have players that are so distinctly different from each other,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I mean, like true opposite end of the spectrums,
Yep.
in all different directions, is that there will never be something that works that everyone is like equally happy with. Um, I don't believe it can be done in any walk of life where you
Mm-hmm.
please everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of, it's just not how life works. So I'm not, I don't think we're under any illusions that we'll create the, what's the word, uh, sliced bread.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm thinking of. That phrase. But we're not going to create the next best thing. But
Uh-huh.
it's the process, that we're working on. So it's having a process of being receptive to change. It's having a process of like, hey, let's adapt this. Maybe some things we'll keep. Maybe some things we won't. Maybe there'll be some mistakes along the way. But yeah, I think MindArk made some ill-judged decisions on Mayhem in the past.
Yep.
I'm not a spokesman, so I'll just say that politically. But I think the attitude. I think the main thing is the attitude has shifted, and so
Good.
even
Yep.
if right now with the current format, so how it was in Easter, I know that there are going to be a few some small changes for the next one as well.
Yep.
I can't say what they are, but I know that there's tweaks happening, and so it's like, yeah, okay, even if right now you look at the format and be like, yeah, well, it's still not how I want it to be. I think what's good to look at is like, okay, it's not the current state, but the attitudes around the process has
Mm-hmm.
changed. So it's again actually doing stuff based on feedback, doing stuff where we're able to tweak, it not be this set thing for the rest of time. So I think I would have confidence in the fact that an attitude has changed,
Yeah.
even if at this present moment it's not in the like perfect form, whatever. As I describe it, it's sort of a transitional state.
It actually reminds me of what you had kind of said at the start of the conversation with the old way of advertising, banner ads saying, come make money, and this real cash economy, make millions, whatever it was, advertised at the start was such a kind of cheap way of doing it and brought people in with like unrealistic expectations. And Mayhem continued for so long with, with all the people macroing and whatnot, that you ended up in a situation where there's all these tokens flooding the market, and it would create a big cycle. It was an easy way for MindArk to keep the big cycle coming in for them, but in the end, it was essentially not great for the economy. So to bite the bullet and say that things have to change and we're going to have to make these changes to progress and to have an evolution within the company. And it seems like those two things are similar. So your marketing is evolving, but also like taking the feedback from the players about, like they're talking about like resource mayhem as well, hearing what the
Mm.
players are saying about that and then changing the way things have been done. Is that what you feel is like kind of happening at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was in our first statement. The what was it? The first statement on the future of mayhem or whatever. Well, literally the second paragraph was like, yeah, resource mayhem is not coming back. I mean, at least not connected to mayhem. So yeah, we needed to make tough and brave decisions, and I
Mm-hmm.
think those were the decisions were made. And again, I have to say, I I am not involved in that. It's not my. I'm not in those
Yeah,
conversations,
yeah, yeah.
so I'm reading this from an external perspective in some sense. But yeah, I do think that it's showing the right attitude. I think of kind of saying like, okay, we knew with the changes that we would make that like obviously that it's not going to appeal to some people. It's not going to appeal to people who do the resource mayhem or sit in annihilation for hours upon hours upon hours. But it was
Yeah,
like uh, but it was a necessary decision, at least at the time, to react to what the community was saying, and then we continue to be adapting that going forward. As
absolutely.
you know, there's the stuff going on with the vendor, and so yeah.
So can you give
We
us
could
the,
talk
the
about this
whole
all
the
time,
whole
but
list of everything that's going to be in the vendor and when, please?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The list on. I mean, we've already announced this, so this is not new information. But the restock times and what items will be restocked, days, times, and what will be in the restock will be announced next week.
Oh, excellent.
And they will. It'll be there'll be slots for each different time, sort of major time zone. So if you're in
Hmm.
America, you will have equal opportunity. If you're in Oceania, you will have equal opportunity. So that's coming next week. But yeah, as I said, that information is already out there that we will post that. So that's not
Perfect.
exactly hot off the press, but
No,
yeah,
that's
just a reminder.
yeah, good to know. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to take a short break. And then when we come back, I'm going to go over to all the community questions, if that's okay for you. If you're still okay for time, if not, not.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
How
so
long have we? Yeah,
just over
an
an
hour and a
hour.
half.
Yeah.
Wow.
We like to chat. It's fine. So the final kind of question from like what I had prepared was really just about your priorities for this coming year. So any specific goals or directions, and then if you could tell us a wee bit more about like what's driving your passion within the game and like what do you love kind of about your role.
I'll answer the second one first because it's the shorter answer. What do I love? I mean, I love the game as a concept. I think there's nothing out there that's anything that's remotely like it. And I think the nature of well, firstly, the fact that it's a real cash economy. I think secondly, the fact there are certain mechanics like for the fact that you kind of have a single avatar, but it's not like a class-based system, so you have access to all the skills. And I also think because of the length of time that the game's running, and it's one of these games where you have the opportunity to be someone.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that if you go and play some other games that I play as well, whether that's like uh, World of Warcraft or some Japanese MMO or whatever it is, like other MMOs, the chances that you get to become someone who is known for something, who is like a recognizable name that someone could like walk past you on the in the virtual street, so to speak, and be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, that's so and so, that's that guy. Um, is so much smaller because you have in most games you have like people have like a bunch of different characters that all
Yeah.
play different classes, and it's just structured very differently mechanically and all the rest of it. Um, so I think because of the way that Entropia is set up, you have this really unique opportunity where people get known for by name by
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
for certain things, and like that's to me that's so cool. It's so cool. And it's like if you're like, okay, I need someone to color my clothes, who are like the best coloring players, and like even I know like is it
Mm-hmm.
Nadine, that's one name. Like if you want an armor, it's like Dracul has all the shops and he sells a bunch of armors. uh if you
Did he
want
pay
a
you for
haircut.
this just that's twice now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, and
Sorry, I put you
there's a
off.
guy I can't remember. I can't remember. There's another guy who does haircuts who's like really well known. I know Starkiller does
Exactly.
haircuts as well, and I know that he's in the chat. So shout out to Starkiller and his haircutting service. But the point is that there's so many uh, opportunities in Entropia to kind of be someone who's known for something, who's known within the community, that's recognized, that is much less in other games. Like, and I
Yeah.
think that is actually so. It's something that people don't talk about so much. I think when they talk about Entropia, they
Yeah.
obviously talk about the money aspect, but I actually think that for me the coolest thing is that it's a game where you can leave a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people who have played this game and who have sadly passed away. When I was working with Next Island, Conk 45, he was kind of well known in the community. He passed away, and I remember going to the memorial event, and it's like I don't remember how many people were there,
It was a lot.
but many people showed up, and
Yeah.
that's such a beautiful thing. And then obviously he had a teleporter on Next Island named after him.
It was. It
And
was
yeah,
a beautiful
it's
event.
all these kind of things I think that really kind of make me passionate about the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's all that kind of stuff. There is a lot of toxic stuff that happens in the game because of the nature of the real cash economy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's lots of negative stuff, toxic stuff. But for me, I focus on that kind of stuff where it's like really amazing stuff that the community does, the game does, that is unique to this game. And yeah, that's what I'm passionate about. That's what makes this job really fun, because you know that when you do something, it really makes a difference to players in the game, and you can tangibly see it.
Hmm.
So it's yeah, that's really cool.
The community aspect of it, I feel like there was a couple of people in the chat said like the same as what you said, it doesn't get spoken about often enough, that the community part of Entropia really is kind of what drives it. I feel like I've said it so many times. If it was a solo game, like I wouldn't play it. Like it's sorry to say, but
Mm,
the game itself, it's great and it's amazing. But it is the community, it is the fact that your friends are there and people know you. Just if you walk into a TP, they're like, oh hey Bonnie, or you know this person, they're like, oh hi, how are you doing? Like
yeah.
you feel part of something. Whereas a lot of other games, they don't have that kind of same community aspect essentially.
Yeah, and like I know that people, there's people who have had like they've got their own societies or whatever, and I know that some of those societies are super really really close knit places. They're sort of like family, right?
Hmm.
So there's something I can say, which is that we had this discussion the other day. Is there any, I don't know if there's any Calypso Rescue Team members in the chat, uh, but Calypso Rescue Team is a society that's been running for that, like everyone knows about, MindArk knows about, every player knows about them. Has been running for the longest time
Hmm.
and have been providing a kind of selfless service to the community for a very long time. Theocles asked who. Calypso Rescue Team. Uh, and so, one of the things that we want to do as MindArk is try and recognize some of those kind of really long-standing groups and societies who have done something.
Hmm.
So I think we have a plan to recognize CRT for their legacy that they've left, that they've achieved in the game. I don't know how, it's not my decision, but I know that we've talked about some way of recognizing for them for that, and actually kind of doing that for more of these kind of long-standing societies as well.
Hmm.
Nothing like, just like a nod or a reference somewhere or something like that. But yeah, I think it's something that's again very special about the game.
Okay, well, this would probably be a good time then for us to go for a wee short break, and then we can move on to. I've got a list of questions that came in from the community over on PCF, Planet Collector Forum. If you will give it like, how long do you want? 5, 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, fab. I will come back then. So this will just half past just now, just before half past. So if we say like 35, come back then, and I will
Yeah,
mute
sounds
you
good.
if you want to mute yourself as well, just to be sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
see you soon.
we'll be right back. Okay, it's not quite the 35 yet, so Socrates doesn't have to come back just yet. But I have to make a comment on the fact that I left you without music. It's because Socrates is coming across over my desktop audio, and I said that I'd mute him, which also mutes my music. So that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it, okay? I've got no weapon cells, that doesn't help. I'm just going to use like a minute or so that I've got until Socrates comes back to catch up with the chat, see how everybody's doing. I have been reading absolutely everything that you've been saying. And thank you for all the subs and the follows. And Larry's back as well. Lovely to see you, Larry. Where you been, man? Good to see you back. And yes, we're being super nice with the Banhammer tonight. I noticed I was even having to do some moderating, but it's fine. I kind of probably would. Oh, Socrates is back. Hi, Socrates. How you doing? I'm just talking nonsense. Don't worry.
It's all right.
Give yourself a wee minute to get back and stuff like that. We're totally fine.
Yeah, I'm all ready to go.
You're ready? Fabulous. Okay. So I'm going to do one quick spam just to tell everybody that we're live again, and then I need to go fix the fact that I have no ammo, and then we'll get straight on to the questions from the Q&A, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, fab.
I'm keeping an eye on the time, but I won't be precious about it.
I'm sorry. I'll be as quick as I can.
Okay. No, it's not your fault. It's good. It's good conversation.
It is. Enjoying talking with you as well. Okay, so we'll just go straight on to questions from the community then. I will just get my avatar out of here because I'm making a hot mess. I'm just going to ignore my avatar. We're just going to do questions from the community. Okay, so this one comes from Akron Blade, who I always say your name wrong, Akron. I'm sorry, but I'll try my best. So he had said, what marketing plans are on the horizon? Any new campaigns, promotions, etc.?
Yeah, so this is where I said earlier that I would save some stuff for later on, so I'll talk about it now. One of the things that should be coming soon to the game, which going all the way back to when we started this interview, I talked a little bit about, which is how, on as far as achieving my goals are, it's the 50% getting people in the door, and it's the 50% of actually retaining them when we're in. Entropia has always had quite a diverse kind of player base in terms of countries where they're from. So obviously, the bulk is in the US. It's, the bulk is kind of English speaking countries, or countries where English is kind of the default second language, and people tend to have a pretty native level speaking level. But obviously at the same time we have always kind of had people from many different countries, but as the numbers kind of show, it's like we've only really, there are many countries out there where English is not the primary language, or not even a second language that's typical. And even in the countries where English is a spoken second language, obviously not everyone speaks a good level of English, or like a highly functional level of English. So that's a huge amount of people who don't really have the opportunity to play Entropia, because nothing makes sense. even if we can get them to download the game and start the game, it's going to be difficult to navigate in that world, interact with the game. And then there's entire kind of regions and countries that are kind of just totally out of reach. One of those kind of an example might be somewhere like South Korea, where it's not common necessarily. It's a totally different culture, different language, very hard for us to breach into. So one of the new capabilities that will be coming in the short, near, long sometime, not that far away, honestly not that far away, is that the game will have the ability to, well, it'll be translated into most other typically gaming languages. I don't have a full list in front of me, but it's a very long list of languages that the game will be translated to. So that will mean, some things will stay the same, right? So like item names will remain what they are, but all the UI, all the quest stuff, like anywhere that you kind of tend to see text will be translated. So that means that suddenly we have the opportunity for a lot more people that we have never been able to kind of reach or retain or even market towards, to have the option to kind of play Entropia. And then the second feature that I don't know if it's going to come at the same time as that, or like just slightly down the line, but will be a feature where when you type in chat, you'll always see any message that someone writes in your language,
I
and
was
you can
just about
type
to
whatever you
ask
want.
that.
And
Yep.
yeah, so I don't know if that's coming with the first phase, but that will come
Hmm.
eventually. So the in terms of what is the kind of future plans for marketing, I mean, I think that's huge. In no uncertain terms, that's one of the biggest unlocking kind of capabilities that we've had in a very long time in terms of its potential ability to change the game positively.
Hmm.
Because suddenly, for all of the people you were already getting, your ability to retain them is higher, right? Because if they're able to understand the game better and they're not a good English speaker, then suddenly you're able to retain them.
Yep.
But the main thing is that it opens up new markets to sort of directly target as a sort of main activity, and that the first country that I want to target is South Korea.
Oh well.
So
And why is that?
later in this year. Why is that? For a few reasons. Obviously it's a very populous country. It's also a very rich country, which is like, people have disposable income.
Yep.
People need to have disposable income in order to play a game like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And the other thing, so there's like financial side, but it also just has a very uh, dedicated gaming community.
Hmm.
If you are in the competitive scene for many games, if you're like, I'm thinking of games like first person shooters, right? But you'll always see that there's like a South Korean team that performs like really, really well, because whatever game it is that they enjoy playing, there's a culture of like really playing it, to be the best, to kind of like take it very, very seriously.
Hmm.
So it kind of feels like somewhere where we haven't really had the opportunity to market to because of the lack of like translation,
Hmm.
and it seems like a good opportunity to make a good entrance into that market.
Yep.
So it's for a number of reasons that I've analyzed, it seems to be the best place to make a sort of, for this first initial kind of big push into that market.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems to be the logical choice for me.
Yeah. Makes
So
total
that's one of the
sense.
plans, which is making the most of that new capability, which, as I said, will be huge for the game. I really seriously think it's a massive potential for the game, just to have that translation capability in.
I think it is.
But yeah, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think it is becoming more a way of things now. I've noticed PCF, for example, and even on different social media platforms, people will post in their own language, but you get to see the translation. So people are getting more and more used to they can write in their own language, but wherever they are is translating it for them anyway, rather than people having to like Google Translate or so. So it makes
Yeah,
sense from a
yeah.
game to be able to do the same thing, I guess.
Yeah, and it's again, it's a huge market. It's a huge market in the MMO space. It's a they're well off enough as a country
Hmm.
to be the right people to play, and yeah, I really think it has a serious potential to bring in a lot of players into the game. Um, so we'll see. But one of the things that you mentioned earlier, was about working with influencers, gaming influencers,
Yep.
you could say, big streamers and stuff, and part of that plan of going into that market is also to work with streamers in that country who are big there. So
Makes
there's a
sense.
lot involved in that marketing campaign or push or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, one of those things will be obviously working with a number of partners out over there.
That sounds exciting.
So yeah, that's one of the big things. Obviously, with the new starter packs, that's been a uh, project that I've led. So having that out there, I think, is going to make a big difference.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
next
that's
question.
that's one of the big things. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
Interest
I'm
of time, we'll
just
we'll
because
move
you'd
on.
said about
Yeah.
time that I'm now like, okay, now the questions come quite quick. I'm going to be keeping you here all night otherwise. This one comes in from Sulja. He had said, since you are now marketing manager, are you the person responsible for the client loader advertisements?
I guess so is the answer. So yes, if you have something for the client loader that you want to discuss, yeah, you can send me a message.
Fab. And what's your favourite colour?
Yeah, I really wanted this one on there because I feel like it's, we need those important and hard-hitting questions. My favorite color It's two colors, and it's teal and like some kind of earthy green. There you
Oh,
go.
the controversial choices. You like the ones that people like, is it blue? Is it green? Something in the
Yeah,
middle?
no, I'm going for the bohemian approach, which
Yeah.
is to choose something airy fairy. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Hallie has some questions for you. He says, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in your role? Maybe name a few, and what has been the hardest?
Yeah, I think for me, the obvious thing of what is the hardest challenge I face is time. It's time and it's resource.
Yeah.
It really is. There's so many things I want to do at a faster pace, but at the end of the day, when you are just one person, there is only so many hours of the day. It's usually when I have time outside of work, it's usually running events or it's like replying to people on Discord or I think it was Thursday or whatever, it was a day off and the Medusa server went down and then it was like trying to fix that.
Yeah.
Or not me personally fixing it, but like coordinating that. So time is really the biggest issue because I mean, you know, you can uh, with any job, especially like office jobs, it's like really the expectation, from a legal objective standpoint, you turn up, you do your hours, and you go home again, and doing that is fine, and I don't know. We have a different work culture here than in some places, but I believe that that principally that's fine. But as people know, I'm very passionate about this game, and so I don't mind. I enjoy doing stuff in my own time, but still, at the end of the day, the limit is time.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's the hardest challenge. There's so many things where I've ideas that I've had to do stuff, and it's just been a case of okay, well, I have to either like indefinitely put it on hold or just let it go for the time being.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's just the truth of it.
That makes sense. And he also asks, what are the best things about your job? And what's been your best experiences?
Best things. Best thing is, I guess, just before we finish for the break, is just doing things and then seeing the impact that it has. I think that's the fun thing. It's like sometimes I'll drop in on streams and they do they're doing stuff and that's really fun and just generally interacting with community. Like most of the time, it's a really positive experience. So I enjoy seeing and feeling people's passion for the game. I think
Hmm.
is really one of my best experiences. But yeah, I mean, just on like a professional level, it's like being able to do stuff and then seeing the impact of it. It's like when I put the starter pack item parameters out there, sort of into the void for people to kind of digest and stuff, and seeing a lot of the comments and someone, I think it was Sev who made a video about it and saying like, oh, this is like good and stuff, and like that's really rewarding for me because it's
Hmm.
like, okay, I've done something, I can see the impact of it. Um, so yeah, I that's the stuff that carries me through the difficult times. Is yeah, that's what I get enjoyment of.
So the questions in from Chi, the first one you've actually already answered, which is will there be new web shop items, which the answer is yes. And the second question that he had asked, will there be any special deals like deposit to buy $5K, get 5%, $5K? That's quite a lot. I just read his question here. Get 5% more uni ammo, deposit $10K and get 10% uni ammo. Like any other like sales or giveaways or anything planned for the kind of web shoppy things?
Yeah. There is. Yeah, we definitely plan to do that. I think we're with the web shop, it's going to be something in phases. So the first phase being the replaced starter packs and slight changes to the refill packs. Then very shortly after that, once that's kind of out there and working, we'll have the kits, as I call them, which are like profession specific, theme specific. So it might be like Mind Force is the first one that will be there. Then it's like taming and then like mining or whatever. So that will be the second phase, and then the third phase is to look at like um, limited time items and also things like as that question suggested, like bigger packs that give you kind of like essentially free universal ammo, like if you're depositing above a certain level. So
That sounds good.
changes to the web shop will come in phases. Yeah.
That's very exciting, actually. That sounds really great. I have another question. This one you've covered already, but I'm just saying that it was one of the questions that we were going to ask from Ikars, who's been chatting in the stream like the whole time, and he had said about, are there any active plans to reach the 100 to 500k YouTubers with affiliate schemes to drive the new signups? You did kind of touch on that already. I think we're having such a big conversation. You're answering quite a lot of the questions that are already part of it.
Yeah,
If that makes
short
sense.
answer is yes. Yeah,
Yes, there we
short
go.
answer is yes.
So Jerem has said, I wonder if MindArk would ever hire a remote presence in game simply for functions like dynamic events, but for players outside of the European Union time zone. So just to go back on the whole conversation for anyone who's just tuned in, we were hearing Socrates talking about he essentially does these in his free time for the most part. And you're obviously in Sweden, I believe, even though you've got your beautiful
Mhm.
English accent. I believe you're in Sweden. So they're asking, is there going to be someone else who can do it, like maybe for the Americans or so?
Yeah, so yes, one of that's kind of the strongest feedback that we've had is like trying to change the times. I think on the most recent one that we did, it was EU evening,
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of is more accessible to Americans. So I am shifting them over to be kind of more of a crossover time and less of them kind of like in EU lunch slash afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I'm shifting more of them over to be later at night. Um, in terms of hiring resource, I mean, it's slightly tangential, but we are bringing back the Entropia advisors. I know it's not the same thing, but in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like having a presence in game across different time zones, that is something that kind of falls into that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more maybe to see what we can address. I'd like to make sure it's as accessible as possible. So yes, I'm actively taking that feedback on and trying to work something out to,
Good
as
to
I
know.
say, make it as accessible as possible.
That sounds amazing. This one comes in from, oh sorry, I've lost my place. Sub Zero. Sub Zero has said, when are the new Mayhem limited items going to get rebalanced in price, considering how little M tokens we get from Assault nowadays? I believe it was mentioned before this was going to happen. I'll just point out before you answer this question that a whole bunch of these questions have come in which are broadly more aimed at the game than Socrates and his
Mm.
role within marketing. And he's decided to grab a few of them and see, look, to almost answer like extra stuff, if that makes sense. So we do appreciate the fact that you're trying to answer these questions that are not really your job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So when are the new? What was the question? When are the new Mayhem the limited items going to get a rebalance in price?
Yep.
Yeah. So as I understand it, well, one of the things I said earlier, and I keep saying is like we're in this transitional period.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's like what we need to see is after the kind of the big thing that needs to happen first is the vendor restock, which again, we'll have an announcement on times and dates on that next week.
Yep.
Um, that needs to happen first, so that then after that's kind of the dust has settled on that,
Mm-hmm.
we can take sort of an analysis of okay, how many tokens are left floating around in the economy, how many, you know, what's the current stock of things. We imagine that everything's going to get pulled. Essentially, I'd be surprised if there's anything good in there that gets left over.
Mm-hmm.
That would be shocking. So we expect everything to kind of be mostly pulled. But basically, in terms of rebalancing the prices on like the limited stuff or like other things that are in there that maybe people aren't talking about, but that's in there, right? The less interesting stuff, perhaps. We will review prices, but that has to happen once the dust has settled on the restock, once some time has passed to kind of see what the balance is between the new rate of tokens being earned and also the stockpile as it exists then at that point in time. So it will come, not immediately, but it will definitely happen.
Does that make sense? Thank you for that answer. The next question is coming in from Shilda. Shilda has some PvP questions for you. Talking of the Ashy Oil Rig, in fact, I've got a question that just popped into my head there when you had said about the once you get an idea of how many tokens. So I know you personally won't, but presumably MindArk has an idea of how many tokens are out there and is going to stock based on their what the statistics essentially and what's out there currently. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yes, we do take that into account.
Okay.
Before you ask, I can't tell you.
How many tokens are there?
Yeah,
So
that would be
yeah,
some
I know.
hot tea.
Okay, so Sheldon's asking about the rig. So do you know, or MindArk, how many peds drop in oil per year at the oil rig, and do you think these peds could be used in a better way for advertising? So essentially, it's stuff that's given out free within the game. Do you know how much it is, and could it be used in a better way? Do you think?
I think that's a really interesting question because even though it seems pretty uh, strange, I mean the first part is I don't know off the top of my head how many peds have been dropped, but I mean you could probably using napkin maths work it out,
Hmm.
because it's like I think it's something like what is it like 3 ped roughly per stack that drops what like every 5 to 10 minutes, five. I don't know what the number is, but at that somewhere in that region. So you could probably work it out. But I think the real answer to the question is that those two things aren't mutually exclusive. So it's not like, okay, guys, we've stopped dropping ped at the oil rig, so now you've got more money at marketing.
Hmm.
These things are not mutually exclusive, and I actually think that um, I'm actually a big fan of things like that. It's why like I did the supply drop events, around Camp Icarus and stuff,
Hmm. Hmm.
dynamic event, and I think stuff like that's good because it's really rewarding for new players, and it's also just kind of like diversifies stuff that's going on. So you create points of interest that players can fight over or can. I don't know. I think it adds more depth to the game, and I don't think it's a good mentality for MindArk to be too tight.
Yep.
I know that's a really English word that maybe doesn't translate, but like to being, how would you explain? Just like clutching the pennies, so to speak.
Yeah. Penny
These
pinching
things.
and trying to save money.
Yeah, and so I think where it's possible, it's good to be generous. I think it's also good for things like retention. I
Hmm.
also think it makes having stuff like that makes the game more accessible to people on low deposit and free to play, and I don't think that's a bad thing. So it's not mutually exclusive. It's yes, there is money that goes to stuff like the Ashy Ore Rig. There's money that goes to all sorts of different things, but those things are not exclusive with the marketing budget.
Okay. And Shelley also asked, what is the most frustrating thing that you see about the game or the community, whichever you prefer to answer?
Um, I I don't know what's most frustrating. I think sometimes, for the most part, honestly, my opinion of the community is good. I mean, it's
Good
all the
answer.
stuff that I said before. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's tactical. No, but it's true. Because what I said before about like how passionate people are and how unique the game is, and you have that ability to kind of be known for something. You can be someone.
Hmm.
You can have that legacy. So, like the vast majority of my interactions with people are positive, and even the cases where people are upset about something or frustrated with something. I not all the time. I do think there are people who take it too far, but I would say like 99% of the time, that comes from a place of genuine like passion and frustration, and is vocalized in a constructive way.
Hmm.
So I'd say my biggest frustration is just when, and it's just a human thing where it's like confirmation bias thing. So it's like kind of people take the bait on a lot of things. There was an example earlier today, literally, which was topical, which is someone made a joke post about having pulled an
I
LP
saw
20
it.
perfected, and we're like, oh, on the forum, and it's like it was the most obvious bait like post ever. And they don't even own the item we checked, and yeah, they're like, oh, I just freshly pulled this from the vendor,
Hmm.
and obviously, like there was like at least 3 or 4 people who like started sort of using their, it's like it fit into their that bias of like, okay, well, of course MindArk would do this, they did it because I think the person who made the post then commented like as a reply to the post and said, oh yeah, Dev handed it to me perfectly. And look, don't get me wrong, I know that there's plenty of reasons to be just like to not like MindArk or to be frustrated at MindArk for the things that have happened in the past. Like I'm not discrediting any of that, but if you were to ask me what is the thing that most frustrates me, it's when people they have this like confirmation bias thing, so they
Hmm.
don't even stop to realize that what they're reading is like the most obvious troll bait post that is like there to get them to rage bait about this. And it's like, if you just stopped for 2 minutes and like thought about it, but it's more the fact that it was like, okay, this fits into my bias, right?
Yeah, the
This fits,
perception.
this
Yeah.
makes sense to me, so I'm just going to run with it. It doesn't matter whether it's real, it doesn't matter if it's got any actual facts behind it. I've just read what someone's posted on the internet and I've taken it as 100% truth. And it's like, I mean, I'm a bit younger than many people here, but even anyone here who grew up with the internet, or even like not even grew up, but most people know, like, rule number one of the internet is don't take everything that you see written as like fact as truth, right? Don't
Mm-hmm.
just believe everything you see on the internet. It's like that's the number one rule of the internet. So, and everyone knows that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's, I guess that I wouldn't say it frustrates me, but it does feel like, oh, come on,
Yeah.
you know,
That does happen a
could have
lot in the
thought
game.
about that a bit more.
There is a lot of like, well, that person said it was so, so then it has to be true. It's like, no, yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand that one. Okay, I've got some
I
questions.
also understand it, but it's, yeah, that would be something.
I've got some questions from Killaby. He had said, if you could change one thing about the way that MindArk communicates with the players, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of answered this earlier a little bit, but yeah, it comes back to what I said earlier, which is that I want for MindArk to, again, this is not, to be clear, this isn't something that's I'm not in a position to kind of decide
Mm-hmm.
what is and isn't said. It's just, that's not my role. It's not my position. I'm not able to make that call. So, but I think it's a general thing that I want MindDoc to be, and I think many people in MindDoc want us to be more transparent about stuff. I would like to see us communicating stuff that's just like, hey, this is something we're working on, and just being able to feel more free to kind of just
Yeah, yeah.
show bits, clips, stuff. Maybe it's not like massively deep, heavy topics, but just like, hey, we're working on, this week we're working on this. I think that would be fun. I think
I
in
think
order
community
to
would like
get to
it.
that point, yeah, I think it would be good. But I also think, and again, this is where it comes back to all the stuff. I'll try not to say all the stuff we said earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, it comes down to the fact that, like, yes, MindDoc needs to be brave in doing that. They need to kind of be more bold, more brave,
Yep.
and do those things. That is the ideal state to be. That is where we should kind of, what we want to and should be going towards. But it's also something that's a two-way street. So it also has to be something where
100%. Yep.
we have a freedom to share things and post things in the spirit that everyone reading or observing that information also takes it in a way that where they understand and know that things are subject to change, and that that it's more in the spirit of being transparent rather than it being like a declaration of like, this is
Yep.
how it is or whatever. So it's a hard to explain exactly what I mean by that, but
No, no.
yeah,
And we did cover that
it's
earlier. You did talk about the
yeah, we did
two-way
cover that
street,
earlier,
and
so
that makes perfect
I
sense.
won't rehash it.
There was another question, and this actually I think you almost addressed with an event, was it today potentially, which was he had asked, there's hundreds of deeds that are owned by Marcus, the calendar dude. Are they ever going to get sold, or
Yeah,
or
yes. I don't know about all of them, but um, I have. There's a couple of plans for some. I think for some of them, it may be just a case where we list them on the auction, which is kind of how it always used to be done. We've identified some where we're like, okay, these estates are fine. There's not any problems with them, because some estates are held by Marcus Calendar because there's something actually broken with the estate, right? So we don't want them
okay,
being
okay,
released back again into the void until something is fixed. Some of them are held because they're like, it was never intended for that estate to be in player hands. It's just like, for other things to work in that area, it like has to technically be an estate, but like
yep,
we retain control of it. But that still leaves a huge amount of estates which work perfectly fine and have just been sat there for a long time. So yes, the plan is to release some of them through some kind of structured events, some kind of like more longer term events, and some of them will be listed as straight sales at the auction, and some of them, I guess, we can work out some other interesting ways to get them out there. But the point is, yes, we are aware that there are a lot held by MindArk that could be in player hands, and so we will begin releasing those back into the populace.
That's good to know.
Not all of them, but at least some.
The kind of one other question that came from Killer B, he'd said, Avatar sales, are they a thing of the past because it was so much awesome?
I don't know when the last time an Avatar sale is it like the liquidations, those kind of
I
things,
think
or
that's what he's meaning. So I think from going from the deed sales, so talking about things that have been liquidated from accounts that have been like banned for so many years or so. So the liquidations are like he's here in the chat. He says yes, liquidations.
okay, yeah, I don't know when the last time there was one was, but let me talk to the team. Let's see if we can do that because I'm sure there are opportunities to do that. Because it's usually like I think it's like banned accounts and stuff, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But
And that ties in with what you were saying
um,
earlier about the dropping of the older stuff, like putting it all back into the players' hands, I guess.
yeah. But yeah, I'll ask the team about that one, and if that's something we can do, I will follow up something on PCF if we're going to do that. So yes,
Fab.
it's a really good suggestion. I hadn't thought of it, so good. Who was it? Killer B?
Killer
Yeah,
B,
good
yeah.
suggestion. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got one in here from Mortimer Hotshot, and he said, and I'm going to cut the question in half because I really love the end of the question. He says, "Is this what you wanted to do when you grew up?"
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, yes and no. I've always wanted to work in the games industry because I'm very passionate about games. Um, so yes, in some sense. Did I think I'd end up in this specific position? No, I didn't expect to be in this kind of position, but I enjoy it. So yes, it is something I've always dreamed of doing, and I consider myself very, very lucky to be able to work on this product. So yes, it is what I wanted to do.
Makes sense. And then he asked, "Do you speak corporate language in your free time?" Presumably, you said you do quite a lot of meetings and things, so you have quite a lot of corporate lingo going
Do I
on.
do I speak corpo language in my free time? Yes. Um, yeah, I mean, I try to. I think there's a fine line between corporate language and just trying to be very clear and in how you explain things and careful, because I know that's something that when I'm talking with the community, even if it's like casual stuff, right? It's when I post something, I always, even if sometimes I don't get it 100% right, I always try and look at what I'm saying and
Mm-hmm.
think, okay, how are people going to pick this apart?
Mm-hmm.
What words are they going to go, okay, well, he used this specific word in this place. So it's like, I think to some extent, it's a consequence of the fact that, like, whatever you say, it's going to be overanalyzed. And so I think there's kind of like a tendency to kind of end up sort of leaning on so-called corpo speak or whatever because you're trying to like make sure that nothing is gonna be misinterpreted. But I'd like to say that I'm just generally trying to be very clear,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty straightforward. So yeah,
I think there's more of a tendency these days for companies when they are talking to their clients or their customers to just talk more straight than add in all the superfluous like bullshit essentially that gets added in. So I think the
yeah,
players, certainly from my perspective, and anyone that I spoke to, do prefer when you just tell us how it is without all the extra stuff added on. So I wonder if Mortimer was kind of hinting at that, like, will we get more just like straight to the point? This is what's happening, guys. End of story. Type of.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I tried to. I mean, with the first Mayhem announcement, the very, very first, what, not Mayhem announcement, the Future of Mayhem announcement that we did. So
Mm-hmm.
that very first initial thing of like, hey, here's a recognition of all of the problems that are going on. We're gonna rethink all of this. That was something where I tried to, I sort of advocated for that to be as kind of straight to the point as possible. I've been like, hey, you know, we've put too many tokens into the game. Hey, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. Hey, this is not a good situation. So, you know, I would say that was slightly more a step in the right direction of just being like, hey, these things weren't good. I think, there's always going to be an element of corpo speak
Yeah.
in this because we are a company and that's how these things work.
Yeah.
We're not, it's just the way it is. But I think it can get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely. And he asked what I think was like quite a good question, which was, do you have the ultimate tip for a new player, like a golden rule?
Golden rule for a new player. Don't let anyone else tell you what Entropia is and how you should play it. Um, my advice is make friends, uh, listen to what people have to say. So, take in, absorb information. Don't take it as absolute fact, but just, listen to what's out there.
Hmm.
But play the game how you want to play it. Because I think a lot of people are told to play the game in a very specific way. It's like, this is how you play Entropia, this is what you do. And, for many people, that is how they want to play and how they end up playing. But
Yeah.
also, the game is a lot bigger than just one type of player. It's kind of what I was talking about earlier, how there is a very loud minority,
Hmm.
which there is in every game. This is not Entropia unique. And the reality is there are lots of kind of, if you took a Venn diagram, right, of all the different like player groups, there's like loads and loads of circles and lots of overlaps and all the rest of it. So my advice to new players is read, learn, listen to everything that's coming your way, but ultimately don't let someone tell you how to play the game. Play the game as you want to play it and find out what works for you, what you enjoy, what you don't, and secondly to that, my second golden rule is set goals for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really important to have a goal, and
Hmm.
that can be I want to reach this skill level. It can be I want to have an apartment and decorate my apartment. It doesn't matter what it is. Like make yourself a goal.
Yeah. Actually completely agree with all of that. It's read as much as you possibly can and like have something that you want to strive for, that you want to achieve within the game is such a huge part of it. So yeah, I agree completely with that. Um, I'm going to move on to kind of one of our final questions from the PCF one. I know I've taken way more of your time than I promised. I think when I try to convince you into this, I'll be like, well, a wee half hour, Socrates, a wee half hour, it'll be fine. Like 3 hours later, we're still going.
Yeah,
So I've got a kind of final last question for Whining Skeptic, and then I would like to just ask if there was anything that you'd kind of read, because I know you're doing the same thing as me. You're reading everything that's getting said in the chat just now. Maybe there's something you wanted to pick up on that was asked in there, or we'll see what the chat has to say, and then I promise I will let you go if that's okay with you. So I'll ask this question, and
that's fine.
I'll open up to you for you to speak about whatever you would like, if that makes sense. So from Wine and Skeptic, he has said, with all the shitstorms within the community, how do you cope? I mean, even Berthabot has to endure more hate than professional athletes. Does it ever get to you, and does it ever make you think about switching jobs?
I think, well, the first thing I can say is that I have no intention of switching jobs, uh, at least for the foreseeable future. Does it ever get to me? Yes, I think, and I think that's the same for anyone probably who
Mm-hmm.
works in the games industry. It's kind of one of those industries where like people are super passionate about games, and that's not a shocking revelation. Like I'm
Yeah.
passionate about the games that I play on a regular basis. But I think especially when you then mix in the kind of real cash economy aspect, it's like you're dialing up those passions and frustrations and emotions to like, times 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's very intense, I think is the word, even though because as I say, I read PCF all the time, I read Discord all the time. I talk to players in game. Sometimes I sit on my official on invisible mode and observe people.
Yeah.
I'm just telling people this so that they can be forever fearing that I'm just like silently
Watching you.
watching them play. But I do it, and the reason is because it keeps me in touch with the game, right? It keeps me in touch with what's going on, and also it's like people behave differently when they know that there's an official around
Mm-hmm.
versus when they're just doing what they usually do with no one, no sort of, they don't realize that someone's watching. So I
Mm-hmm.
quite like to people watch, and it's really fun, and you see some really amazing interactions with people. I'll sit at Camp Icarus a lot, and there'll be some new players running around, and then some kind of long-term player will come over and start like helping people and like giving them some items and like answering their questions, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's a really lovely thing to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to the question. Yes, it's stressful. It's very intense, and it can be very difficult sometimes. But yes, no, I don't have any intention of switching jobs. I enjoy what I do. It's very rewarding, but it's a very intense job.
I think
And yeah.
I think the community can see, particularly some of the feedback that you've had in the chat tonight, that they can tell that you're passionate about what you do, and I think it's making a difference. I would say that people are feeling. You probably see it in Discord all the time or in PCF. It's like it's okay. It's like Socrates will fix it, and Socrates will sort this thing out, because we feel like that you're not letting the negativity like bind you from speaking. You are just still
Mm.
passionate about the game, and I think that is very, very much appreciated. Certainly from my point of view, and I think from what the chat's saying as well, they're appreciating your candid answers. They're saying yes.
I can answer. I can actually say something because I know some people are talking about the sometimes you know if there's someone watching. One thing that if an official who's invisible teleports to your location, um, it will displace your avatar for a second. So your avatar will like move as if it's bumped into something. Now that can happen just anyway, right? That can just sometimes happen, right? But if you're wondering sometimes and suddenly your avatar like bumps, like moves, maybe like 1 out of 10 times that could just be an official. So that's a little hot tip for everyone. But yeah, no, I mean one thing I will say is that I I think as well it's important, and I'm not just saying it for the sake of it, but because I am sort of more in front of the community, I think it's quite often that people attribute good things that happen to me, right? Because I'm the face that kind of people know and can talk to. But a lot of the time, it's not. This is not a one-man show. It's
Yeah.
really not. I make up a small portion of all the things MindArk does, and even when there's times where I help people with support case issues or they're stuck somewhere or whatever, there is someone else working at MindArk behind the scenes who is doing that, who's also on their own time, helping someone who's stuck somewhere or resolving something, right? It's not just me on my own. Um, and so there are lots of things that happen that might be easy to attribute in whole to something that I'm doing because that's just what you see, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
point of contact. But I think it is also important to say that there are passionate people at MindArk and people who don't, that I know that there's lots of problems. I know that there's, not great things that happen, but there are also people who do good things, great things, and who are passionate, who will never get that recognition because they're not, visible in front of the players. So I think that's kind of something that's worth calling out as well.
I think that's nice
To
that you're
their, to
not
their credit.
taking all the credit, that you're saying it's your colleagues as well who are helping out.
Yeah, yeah. But it's true. It's true. It's, I can't, even the things that I do, that I would take credit for, is made possible by the other people at MindArk. So it's never a solo thing. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well that's kind of there was a load of questions that were put on PCF. A lot of them were more aimed at the game sort of side of things. So obviously we decided on a bunch of questions that were kind of more towards your role. So that's what I'd taken, or what we had taken from PCF. Was there anything that you feel that we haven't covered this evening, or that you've read throughout this chat tonight that you kind of wanted to pick up on, or any points that I've missed essentially?
Not particularly. It's like getting to 20 past midnight at the minute. I mean, I'd be open to doing this again sometime.
Yep.
So we can anything that's left that seems relevant, we can probably follow up on. But yeah,
Yeah.
as I say, it's
Taking
it's
taking
getting to
way too
20
much of
past
your.
midnight, and yeah, I've got to maintain somewhat of a sleep schedule. So yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
I've really enjoyed this. I hope everyone's learnt something or has enjoyed it. And yeah, as I say, I think you said this will be available on YouTube afterwards, right? So if people have missed stuff, they can listen to it back.
Absolutely. So I'll save the VOD on Twitch and I'll also upload it to YouTube tomorrow. And I think I can speak kind of on behalf of everyone in the chat, and possibly everyone who's not in the chat but who is going to watch this going forward, that we have genuinely appreciated your openness, the fact that you've spent your Saturday evening and I've kept you so long. I feel terrible. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me tonight and to answer all these questions that the community had put forward. And if you're saying if there's stuff that we didn't like cover tonight, and that there might be an opportunity in the future that we could do that again, it would be phenomenal. And I'm sure the community would really appreciate that too.
Oh, actually, I do have one thing that I wanted to bring up. because I saw a question that said, this is one last thing I promise,
No,
and,
you're
and then
fine.
I'll,
You're
and then
fine.
I'll go. Someone said, have you ever attended the LAN event?
Oh,
Which I thought was funny because I've attended every year since 2022.
oh wow.
But this is something that I really love going to, something that I'd recommend other people go to. But I think one thing that I really want to say is, because in the interest of like having an interview and people kind of getting to know a bit about me and ask questions, I think it's an important time to mention that everyone, and I mean, well, maybe if you've been banned from the game for being horrible, maybe not, but you know, assuming you're a normally reasonable, adjusted person and a player of Entropia, you are welcome to come and visit the MindArk office. That is, it's an open door
Oh
policy. I mean,
wow.
not literally. You do have to talk to us first. Like, please don't just turn up and start banging on the door at some weird time. But generally speaking, if you want to come to Gothenburg and you want to have a tour of the office and just kind of say hello, meet some of the people. We have always facilitated that. We did it for the LAN event. So obviously we have the yearly LAN event, and this year everyone kind of got a chance to come and meet us at the office. And so yeah, this if anyone's out there and is willing to make the trip, then we'd be more than welcome to have you. But please, as I say, talk to us about it first. Don't just turn up, just so that we can also make sure that we can make sure that whoever needs to be in is in, and we can facilitate it and all the rest of it. So
Oh, that's.
yes, it's an open door, so everyone is welcome, just as long as you talk to us first. But yeah,
I
just wanted
think
to
that's.
leave everyone with that.
I think that's great. That's a lovely idea that you could just go visit you and say hello in person. So, thank you for letting us know.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Well,
Cool.
if that is everything, then I will just end with saying thank you so much for being my guest tonight, and thank you everyone in the chat for being here for all this length of time. Really appreciate your time, Socrates, that you spent with us, and for all the questions that you answered.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it,
Okay.
and yeah, take care. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.